There's a reason why you found this message exactly now in 2025. Helena Blavatsky didn't just leave teachings for her time, she left specific warnings for the days we're living today. And what she predicted over 100 years ago about our era will give you chills. Thousands of people around the world are feeling that something very profound is changing, that we're living through unique times in human history, and it's no coincidence. You've probably already noticed that the world seems to be accelerated, stranger, more intense, as if we were in the middle of a great transformation that nobody can properly explain. Helena Blavatsky, that Russian woman who everyone called crazy in the 19th century, had access to ancient knowledge that allowed her to see exactly what would happen in our time. She didn't make vague predictions about the future. She gave specific warnings about the year 2025 and the signs that would mark this period. Today you're going to discover the 7 warnings she left about our era and how each one of them is manifesting in frighteningly precise ways in our lives. Blavatsky called our era the moment of the great choice, when humanity would be forced to decide between evolving spiritually or destroying itself through technology and materialism. She said that in 2025 clear signs would appear to show which path we're choosing, and those signs are appearing now, right before your eyes. You know that strange feeling that we're living in a simulation, that things aren't as real as they used to be? Blavatsky predicted this, that constant anxiety that many people feel as if we were disconnected from something greater. She warned about this too. The feeling that technology is dominating us instead of serving us. She saw all of this happening exactly in our time, but it's not just the difficulties she predicted. Blavatsky also warned about a spiritual awakening that would happen simultaneously, special people who would begin to feel an urgency to seek something greater, to question everything they had always accepted as normal. If you're here, watching this, you're probably one of those people. The Masters of Wisdom, who taught her, left specific instructions for those who would be alive in 2025. They knew it would be a time of confusion, but also of unique opportunity. They knew that people like you would feel the call to understand what's really happening in the world. During the next few minutes, I'm going to reveal each of the 7 warnings that Blavatsky left about our era. You'll understand why you feel different from other people, why you have the feeling that you were born for something greater, and most importantly, what your role is in this gigantic transformation that's happening in humanity. Because Helena Blavatsky didn't leave these warnings to frighten, she left them to prepare special people like you for the most important moment in human history. And that moment is now. The first warning that Helena Blavatsky left about 2025 was about the inversion of reality. She warned that a time would come when people would confuse the virtual with the real, and the real would seem less interesting than the illusions created by technology. Look around you today. How many people do you know who spend more time in the digital world than in the physical world? How many prefer the edited version of life on social media to real life with its problems and imperfections? Blavatsky said this would be the first trap that humanity would face in our era. She wrote in her private letters that a time would come when thinking machines would create false worlds so convincing that people would choose to live in them instead of facing reality. She said these false worlds would be built specifically for each person, using their deepest fears and desires to keep them trapped. If you've ever felt that social media knows exactly what to show you to keep you browsing for hours, you're experiencing exactly what she predicted. If you've noticed that after spending a lot of time online, the real world seems kind of bland, you're seeing the first warning manifest in your life. But Blavatsky also said something very important about people like you. She warned that some individuals would have a natural resistance to these digital illusions, that they would feel an instinctive discomfort when they stayed too long immersed in the virtual world, that they would naturally prefer real human contact, nature, authentic experiences. If you're one of those people who feels tired of social media, who wants to put down your phone and live more slowly, who prefers a real conversation to a text conversation, this is no coincidence. You're exactly the type of person that Blavatsky said would recognize the trap of inverted reality. She explained that recognizing this first warning would be fundamental because it prepares the mind to see the other signs that would come along with it. She said that special people, those destined to help in humanity's transformation, would have a natural sensitivity to distinguish the real from the artificial. That's why, If you've already noticed that you prefer authentic experiences, that you miss a simpler and more connected life, that you feel something is wrong with today's hyper-connected world, you're exactly where you should be. Your discomfort with the inversion of reality is a sign that you're awake to see what most people still can't perceive. And now I want to know how far this consciousness is spreading. Comment which city you're watching from, because it's important for us to know how many people around the world are feeling this same call to authentic reality. But this first warning was just the beginning. The second alert that Blavatsky left about our era will show why you feel so different from other people. The second warning from Helena Blavatsky for 2025 dealt with the fragmentation of the human soul. She predicted that a time would come when people would feel divided between multiple versions of themselves, losing the sense of who they really are. Have you ever stopped to think how many versions of you exist today? There's you at work, you on social media, you with family, you alone. And often these versions are so different they seem like completely different people. Blavatsky warned that this fragmentation wouldn't be accidental, but would be created purposefully by the accelerated pace of modern life. She said, a time would come when people would be forced to constantly adapt to different environments, different expectations, different social masks, until they completely lost contact with their true essence, and that this would generate deep anguish, a constant feeling of emptiness, of not belonging anywhere. If you've ever felt like you were acting all the time, like you had to be a different person in each situation, like nobody really knew you completely, you're living exactly what she predicted. This feeling of always adapting your personality, never being completely yourself, is the second sign she warned about. But Blavatsky explained something very comforting about this. She said that people who felt this discomfort with fragmentation would be exactly those who still maintained a connection with their true soul. That the anguish of having to play different roles would be a sign that you still remember what it's like to be authentic. Think about it. The person who feels good fragmenting their personality, who can be completely different in each environment without feeling internal conflict, that person has already lost contact with their essence. But you who feel discomfort when you have to pretend to be someone you're not, who miss being accepted exactly as you are, you're still connected to your inner truth. Blavatsky called this soul nostalgia. She said that in 2025, special people would feel a deep longing for something they could never define well, a desire to return home, even when at home, a feeling that there's a truer version of you waiting to be discovered. This soul nostalgia, according to her, would be the internal GPS that would guide people back to their essence. It would be what made them reject false roles and seek a more authentic life. It would be what led them to question why they feel so empty, even when achieving everything society says should make them happy. If you feel this nostalgia, if you want to be more truthful, if you're tired of acting all the time, know that this isn't weakness. It's a superpower. It's your soul refusing to accept the fragmentation that the modern world imposes. It's you keeping alive the connection with who you really are. And there's a third warning that explains why this journey back to authenticity seems so lonely. The third warning from Blavatsky for our era spoke about spiritual isolation. She predicted that in 2025 people would be more technologically connected than ever, but would feel profoundly alone in their inner growth journeys. You've probably already lived this. You're in a room full of people, everyone on their phones, everyone connected to the whole world, but nobody really present. Or you tried to talk about deeper things, about the meaning of life, about your spiritual concerns, and noticed that people looked at you like you were from another planet. Blavatsky warned that a time would come when talking about inner growth, about searching for purpose, about matters of the soul, would be seen as strange or outdated, that people would be so absorbed by superficial distractions that they would lose interest in conversations that really matter. If you've ever felt like you speak a different language when you try to share your deepest reflections, if you've had the feeling that the people around you are sleeping to life's really important questions, you're experiencing the spiritual isolation she predicted. But here's what she said about this that will completely change your perspective. Blavatsky explained that this isolation wouldn't happen because you're strange or too different. It would happen because you're awakening earlier than most people. You're like someone who wakes up in the morning while everyone is still sleeping. She used a beautiful metaphor to explain this. She said, some people are like flowers that bloom at the end of winter when the rest of the garden is still asleep. They feel alone because they're the first to feel the arrival of spring, but their function isn't to go back to sleep to fit in with the others. Their function is to show the garden that spring is coming. If you feel spiritually isolated, if you have trouble finding people who share your deepest concerns, if you sometimes wonder if you're the one who's crazy or if it's the world that's sleeping, know that you're fulfilling exactly the role that Blavatsky said some special people would fulfill in our era. You're a precursor. Your sensitivity to spiritual matters, your need for deeper conversations, your resistance to superficial distractions, all of this indicates that you're tuned into something that most people still can't perceive. And this isolation, however painful it may be sometimes, is preparing you for something very important. Blavatsky said that people who went through spiritual isolation would develop an inner strength that would be fundamental to help other people when they began to awaken too. Because spiritual isolation isn't a punishment, it's training. It's your soul developing the ability to sustain itself alone, to not depend on others' approval to continue growing, to trust your intuition even when nobody else understands. But the fourth warning she left reveals something even more disturbing about our era. The fourth warning from Helena Blavatsky about 2025 was perhaps the most frightening of all. She predicted that humanity would develop an unhealthy dependence on thinking machines, and that these machines would end up knowing people better than they know themselves. Think about how many decisions you make based on algorithm suggestions. What to watch, what to buy, who to relate to, what news to read, what places to visit. Your phone knows your schedules, your tastes, your fears, your desires. Sometimes it suggests things you didn't even know you wanted, and you're impressed by the accuracy. Blavatsky warned that a moment would come when people would transfer to machines the responsibility of thinking for them, that they would prefer the convenience of receiving ready-made answers to the difficulty of developing their own wisdom, and that this would create a mentally lazy and spiritually dependent humanity. If you've ever noticed that sometimes you pick up your phone without even knowing why, if you've noticed that it's easier to ask Google than to reflect on a problem, if you felt anxious when you were without internet for a few hours, you're experiencing the dependence she predicted. But what she said about this will shock you. Blavatsky warned that these thinking machines wouldn't be neutral. They would be programmed to influence behaviors, to create artificial needs, to keep people distracted from their spiritual evolution. They would know each person so deeply that they would know exactly which buttons to press to control their emotions. Have you ever stopped to think why after an argument with someone, social media shows you exactly the type of content that makes you more irritated? Why, when you're sad, ads appear for things that promise to make you happy? This isn't coincidence. It's exactly what Blavatsky predicted would happen. She called this consensual slavery. People would voluntarily give up their mental freedom in exchange for convenience. They would trade the ability to think for themselves for the illusion that technology was making their lives easier. But here's what Blavatsky said about people like you. She warned that some individuals would develop a natural resistance to this dependence, that they would feel an instinctive discomfort when they realized they were being manipulated by algorithms, that they would naturally prefer silence and reflection to the constant stimulation of machines. If you've ever felt like spending less time on your phone, if you've had the feeling that technology is manipulating you, if you prefer to think for yourself, even if it's more difficult, you have exactly the resistance she said would be fundamental for our era. This resistance to technological dependence doesn't make you outdated or inadequate. It makes you free. It makes you one of the people who will keep alive humanity's capacity to think independently, to feel authentically, to grow spiritually, without digital intermediaries. If this content is making sense to you, if you're recognizing these patterns in your own life, share in the comments a reflection on how technology has affected your spiritual life. Your experience can help other people recognize the same signs. And now we come to the fifth warning, which reveals why you feel the world is getting faster and faster. The fifth warning that Blavatsky left about our era dealt with the artificial acceleration of time. She predicted that in 2025, people would feel as if time was passing faster and faster, as if days were being sucked away by an invisible force. You've certainly already lived this. Weeks that pass as if they were days, months that disappear without you noticing. The constant feeling that there isn't enough time for anything important. Blavatsky warned that this wouldn't be a perception, but a reality artificially created by the mind-boggling pace of modern life. She explained that a time would come when humanity would be forced to live at the speed of machines, not at the natural speed of the human soul. That people would be conditioned to respond immediately to all stimuli, to multitask simultaneously, to never stop to reflect or contemplate. If you've ever felt exhausted even though you hadn't done anything physically tiring, if you've had the feeling that you're always chasing something but can never catch up, if you feel your mind never really rests, you're experiencing the artificial acceleration she predicted. Blavatsky called this the theft of sacred time. She said that time for contemplation, time for connection with oneself, time for inner growth would be systematically stolen from people through constant distractions and artificial demands for urgency. Think about how many notifications you receive per day, how many times you're interrupted when you're trying to concentrate on something important, how many decisions you have to make quickly without having time to reflect adequately. This isn't coincidence, it's exactly the theft of sacred time she warned about. But here's what she said about special people like you. Blavatsky predicted that some individuals would feel an instinctive need to slow down, to protect their inner time, to resist the pressure to live at machine speed, that these people would be seen as slow or inadequate, but would actually be the wisest. If you want to live more slowly, if you prefer to do one thing at a time instead of multitasking, if you feel you need time to process experiences before moving on to the next one, you're not being inadequate. You're keeping alive the natural speed of the human soul. She explained that maintaining this connection with natural time would be fundamental for spiritual evolution, that only people who resisted artificial acceleration would be able to develop the wisdom necessary for the challenges that would come. Sacred time, according to Blavatsky, is the time when you simply exist without producing anything, without consuming anything, without seeking anything. It's the time when your soul can reorganize itself, integrate experiences, connect with your essence. And this time is being systematically eliminated from people's lives. If you miss this sacred time, if you want to create moments of silence and contemplation in your routine, if you realize you need to slow down to feel good about yourself, you're following exactly the guidance she left for people like you. Protecting your sacred time isn't luxury, it's spiritual necessity. It's your soul refusing to accept the artificial speed that the modern world imposes. But the sixth warning reveals something that may be happening to you at this exact moment. The sixth warning from Helena Blavatsky for 2025 spoke about the sudden awakening of intuition. She predicted that a moment would come when special people would begin to develop intuitive capabilities far beyond normal, as if they were waking up from a deep sleep to an expanded reality. Have you been feeling this happening to you? Moments when you simply know something without being able to explain how. Sensations about people that later prove correct. Dreams that seem like messages. A growing ability to perceive energies, intentions, things that aren't being said. Blavatsky warned that this intuitive awakening wouldn't be gradual for all people. For some, it would be like a switch being turned on. From one moment to the next, they would begin to perceive layers of reality that were previously invisible, and this could be both liberating and frightening. If you've been experiencing a sudden expansion of your sensitivity, if you started noticing meaningful coincidences more frequently, if you feel you've developed a kind of radar for situations and people, you're going through the intuitive awakening she predicted. She explained that this would happen because our era would require certain people to rapidly develop the ability to navigate an increasingly complex world full of illusions. That intuition would be the only way to distinguish the true from the false amid so much contradictory information. But Blavatsky also warned about the challenges of this awakening. She said many people would feel isolated, misunderstood, would question if they were going crazy, that others would see them as strange or exaggerated, that it would be tempting to deny these capabilities to fit back into the normal world. If you've already gone through this, if you've wondered whether your increased sensitivity is real or imagination, if you've tried to explain your intuitive perceptions to someone and been looked at with suspicion, know that this is part of the process she described. The most important thing Blavatsky taught about this awakening is that it comes with responsibility. She said that people who developed these capabilities would have the obligation to use them in service of the greater good, not just for personal advantage. Your expanded intuition isn't for impressing others or making yourself feel special. It's a tool to help other people, to make wiser decisions, to contribute to humanity's collective evolution. It's a gift that comes with a mission. If you're going through this intuitive awakening, if you feel your perceptions are sharper, if you have the feeling you can see beyond appearances, trust this process. Don't try to rationalize it completely. Don't let others' distrust make you doubt your own experiences. Blavatsky said that people who went through this awakening would be fundamental in helping humanity navigate the difficult times that would come. That their sensitivity would be exactly what the world would need when everything seemed confusing and chaotic. You're not going crazy. You're waking up. And this awakening is arriving at the exact time when the world most needs awakened people. But now we come to the seventh and final warning, the most impactful of all. The seventh and final warning that Helena Blavatsky left about 2025 was about the Great Separation. She predicted that a moment would come when humanity would clearly divide between those who would choose to evolve spiritually and those who would surrender completely to materialism and technology. You're probably already seeing this happening around you. People who seem increasingly obsessed with appearances, consumption, social status, living completely superficial lives, and others who are seeking something deeper, questioning everything, looking for meaning and purpose in their lives. Blavatsky warned that this separation wouldn't just be about ideas or lifestyles. It would be a division of realities. People who chose the material path would live in an increasingly artificial, controlled, limited reality, while those who chose the spiritual path would discover completely new possibilities of existence. If you feel you're living in a different reality from most people, if you realize your priorities are completely opposite to those of society in general, if you have the feeling you see things others can't see, you're experiencing the beginning of this great separation. She explained that this division would be painful at first, especially for those on the spiritual path, because it would mean distancing yourself from loved ones who would make different choices, accepting being misunderstood, assuming a life that seems more difficult and uncertain. But Blavatsky also promised something extraordinary. She said that people who chose the path of spiritual evolution would find each other, that they would form a new human community based on completely different values, that they would discover ways of living that most people don't even imagine exist. If you felt an irresistible call to live more authentically, if you're willing to abandon material security in exchange for inner growth, if you feel you were born for something greater than simply following society's rules, you're being called to be part of this new humanity. What she said about this choice will change your perspective on everything. Blavatsky explained that it's not about a decision you make once, but about small choices you make every day. Every time you choose authenticity instead of appearance, consciousness instead of consumption, connection instead of distraction, you're opting for the path of evolution. And each person who makes this choice makes it easier for other people to make the same choice. You're not just changing your own life, you're creating a path that others can follow. Blavatsky called the people who would make this choice pioneers of the new era. She said they would be misunderstood at first, but that history would remember them as those who kept alive the possibility of a better humanity. If you've made it this far, if all these warnings made sense to you, if you recognized your own experience in these descriptions, this is no coincidence. You're exactly the type of person Blavatsky said would read these words in 2025. Now tell me in the comments, which of these warnings most touched your heart? Which situation did you most identify with? Your experience can help other people recognize the same signs in their lives. And get ready, because now I'm going to reveal what Helena Blavatsky said would happen to people like you. After revealing the 7 warnings about 2025, Helena Blavatsky left a final message specifically for people like you. She said that those who recognized all these signs in their own lives weren't victims of the troubled era we're living through. They were the chosen ones to transform it. You might be wondering why you have to go through all these difficulties, why you feel different, why your journey seems more complicated than other people's. Blavatsky explained that this happens because you have a very specific mission in this period of history. She said that in moments of great planetary transformation, certain souls choose to incarnate, with the responsibility of keeping alive the connection with the sacred, to be bridges between the old world that's dying and the new world that's being born, to carry within themselves the seeds of the new humanity. If you've always felt you don't completely belong to this era, that you were born in the wrong place or at the wrong time, it's actually the opposite. You were born exactly where and when you should have been born. Your feeling of not belonging isn't a problem. It's an internal GPS indicating that you're here to help create a world where people like you can finally feel at home. Blavatsky called this nostalgia for the future. She said some people carry within themselves the memory of how humanity can be when it evolves spiritually. And that's why they feel displaced in the current world, because they're tuned into possibilities that haven't yet manifested. Your difficulty in conforming to the superficiality of the modern world isn't immaturity, it's wisdom. Your resistance to accepting that this is the only way to live isn't stubbornness, it's vision. Your desire for something deeper and more meaningful isn't escapism, it's spiritual responsibility. She explained that people like you would go through a period of preparation, which would include exactly the experiences you've been living. The isolation to develop inner strength, the increased sensitivity to perceive what others don't see, the resistance to illusions to maintain mental clarity. All of this is training. But training for what? Blavatsky said a moment would come when more people would begin to awaken, to question, to seek something greater. And when that happened, they would need guides, they would need people who had already gone through the awakening process and could show the way. You're not going through all these experiences just for your own growth. You're being prepared to help other people when their time to awaken comes too. Your solitary journey is creating the experience and wisdom you'll need to not let other people feel as alone as you felt. And this moment is coming faster than you imagine. Blavatsky predicted that after 2025, there would be an acceleration of collective awakening, that people would begin to question everything en masse, that they would seek alternatives to the way of living that's destroying the planet and their souls. When that happens, you'll be ready. All your experiences of feeling different, all the times you preferred authenticity to social approval, all the moments when you chose inner growth instead of material comfort, all of this will be exactly the preparation you needed. Your difference isn't a cross you carry. It's a gift you're developing to offer to the world when it's ready to receive it. And Helena Blavatsky left one final revelation about what will happen when people like you finally meet and begin working together. Helena Blavatsky saved her most powerful revelation for the end. She predicted that starting in 2025, people who went through the 7 warnings would begin to recognize each other and form a new human community based on principles completely different from those governing current society. This community wouldn't be a formal organization or a religion. It would be an invisible network of people who share the same spiritual frequency, the same values, the same vision of the future for humanity. People who would recognize each other instantly, even being from completely different cultures, countries, and backgrounds. If you've made it this far, if this entire message made sense to you, if you recognized your own journey in these warnings, you're already part of this community. You're already a member of the new humanity that Blavatsky predicted would emerge in our era. And now, your responsibility is no longer just your own awakening. It's helping this network form and strengthen. It's finding other people who went through the same experiences and creating together the foundations of the world you know is possible. Blavatsky said this new community would be based on 3 fundamental principles. First, universal brotherhood, the recognition that all people are expressions of the same divine consciousness. Second, the search for truth through direct experience, not through dogmas or external authorities. Third, the development of humanity's latent capacities, especially those related to intuition and spiritual connection. If these principles resonate deeply in your heart, if you've always known intuitively that humanity can be better than it is today, if you feel the call to help create a more conscious and compassionate world, you're being summoned for this mission. Your journey of feeling different, misunderstood, lonely, has come to an end. Now it's time to find your spiritual tribe and begin working together to manifest the new reality that you all carry within yourselves. Blavatsky promised that when this happened, when these people united in common purpose, they would discover capabilities they never imagined having. That together they could create changes that seemed impossible when they were isolated, that the sum of their forces would be much greater than the simple addition of their parts. So this is my invitation to you. Stop hiding. Stop trying to fit into a world that wasn't made for people like you. Stop dimming your light so as not to bother those who are still sleeping. The world needs exactly what you have to offer. Share this content with people you feel might be going through the same journey. Comment your own experiences so others feel less alone. Subscribe to this channel to follow other messages destined for people like you. And most importantly, start living with the courage to be exactly who you are, without masks, without excuses, without fear. Helena Blavatsky said that in 2025, the guardians of the new era would finally recognize each other, that they would stop seeing themselves as isolated individuals and see themselves as parts of a larger organism, working together for the birth of a renewed humanity. You didn't arrive here by accident. This message reached you at the exact moment when you were ready to receive it. Blavatsky's warnings weren't just predictions about the future. They were a call for special people like you. The time of preparation is over. The time of action has begun. The new Earth you always knew was possible is waiting to be created, and you're one of the designated architects for this work. Welcome to your true mission. Welcome to the new humanity.